Hi, I'm Damien Porter, former Special Forces operator, high performance living coach from eatwellmovewell.net, and you're listening to my Straight Talk Mind and Muscle podcast. Subscribe for more amazing tips, interviews, and wisdom from phenomenal guests, and get your free copy of my 5-day meal plan and exercise ebook at realketonesaustralia.com. This show is sponsored by realketonesaustralia.com, the best and most effective ketone supplement on the market to reduce anxiety, enhance brain performance, and supply twice as much energy as glucose. You can find all my former shows on Spotify, iTunes, YouTube, Google, Amazon, and Libsyn. Thanks for watching and listening. Marcus Aurelius Anderson, TED Talk speaker, author, soldier, stoic. Emotions assassinate the truth. Well, it's not often that I find myself lost for words, but that sure did happen during this show. If you've ever needed to hear how to take responsibility for your own life and circumstances, then this man makes Jocko Willink look like a mere student. A sit down with the world famous Marcus Aurelius Anderson, TED Talk speaker, author, soldier, consultant, and in my mind, a true stoic. One of the most insightful and thoughtful men I've ever met. Marcus, however, is never caught in the paralysis by analysis trap. He was, however, paralyzed and left a quadriplegic at 38 years of age due to a military career, preparing to go to Afghanistan on operations with the 10th Mountain Division of Blackhawk Down fame. While training to deploy with the United States Army, Marcus suffered a serious spinal injury. During the ensuing surgery, he died on the operating table twice. Using the best way out is always through mentality, Marcus overcame his disability and lifted himself from the darkest of depths to the dizzying highs of his famous TED Talk. Authoring his book, The Gift of Adversity, and his podcast, Acta Non Verba. Without further ado, I give you Marcus Aurelius Anderson, a 2022 Stoic. You can find Marcus at marcusaureliusanderson.com. All right. Well, welcome to the Straight Talk Mind and Muscle podcast. Welcome to the Eat Well Move Well radio show. Today, my guest, I feel like I'm in the movie The Gladiator, Marcus Aurelius Anderson. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for your time, and it's a pleasure to have you on the show.
It's an honor to be here. Thank you for the opportunity, my friend. I'm looking forward to this.
Oh, look, you've got such a story, and we're just chatting then. I just love sharing people's stories. I pick interesting people. I do believe I pick the best people in the world at what they do. And you just jumped out, Marcus, from the TED Talk, the book, your story. It just blew me away. So I'll just give the listeners and the viewers a bit of background. You've written the book, The Gift of Adversity, and then the TED Talk on the back of that. It just resonated so well with myself. Obviously, resonated so well with so many people around the world as well. So, first off, congratulations on your success there, and congratulations on your journey from going through all your places to where you are now.
Thank you. It's been a journey, but it's impossible to learn these lessons any other way, in my opinion. And I don't know about you, but lots of times we learn things, but we don't always put them into play, and it takes some sort of catalyst. And lots of times the catalyst for human beings is adversity, whether it be a punch in the face, whether it be a cancer diagnosis, a divorce, financial ruin, whatever it is, we have to have something to force us to take action. So knowledge is not enough. We have to act. Knowledge that is acquired but unutilized is the equivalent of ignorance. So we have to put it into play. Otherwise, we're just like everybody else, and we're just kind of chatting and not doing anything. Yeah.
100%, and especially so in this world, there's just so much information. Sean, I've forgotten who the carnivore guy's name. He's a surgeon. He's the one who sort of brought the carnivore diet into at least being credible. Really interesting cat. He's like, when he was doing his medical degree, he had to go to the library and go to the librarian and get the number for the book and go find it in these simulated books behind me. and now I remember listening to his interview. He's got 100 tabs open on his computer. We're in that paralysis by analysis sort of age, and you've nailed it there with actions required. And what a great name for your podcast, Acta Non Verba. I'm a crayon guy, and I eventually figured it out. Actions, not words.
Yeah, actions, not words. It's Latin, and it's very much a mantra for us. Adversity is a gift. Actions, not words. Stand up and do something, and that's what we have to do. I see right now it's very in vogue to have the warrior mentality or to claim that you have it, but it's from one thing to know path. It's one thing to walk the path, and then it's one thing to be willing to continue to walk the path over a lifetime, much like yourself, much like what I'm trying to do. And if we can embrace that, because everybody has that warrior spirit, but again, we need something to make us step forward. So a woman, if she's protecting her child, like that's a mama bear. If there's an adversary, the physical manifestation of adversity is the adversary, the opponent. I don't even want to mess with the mom if she's trying to protect her child, because she's going to give everything she has and more, and she's going to die trying to stop whatever that is that's threatening them. And if we can learn to even harness a fraction of that towards our life, stop buying our own bullshit excuses, stop justifying being mediocre, stop trying to put ourselves in that place where we're not pushing. It's amazing what we can accomplish, but we have to be very willing to move forward with that. And that's why, and understandably, in the military, what do we have? The 70% rule. We have the mission, we have the objective, we have the target, we have intel, which is usually not great. But even if we had perfect intel, perfect weather, perfect knowledge of everything, perfect comms, there's going to be that percentage of something that's going to change, something that's going to move. There's going to be something that is not under our control. So we have to have at least that 70% idea. And many times, whether it be creating a business, writing a book, starting a podcast, even, everybody wants to write out all this stuff. They want to do the analysis by paralysis. They want to get all this information. And then when they have enough, they want to procrastinate even more, because it's like, shit, the only thing left for me to do now is actually do this. And this is going to take time, and this is going to be hard work, and I'm going to fall down a lot. And there's a learning curve and everything. But if we're willing to do that, if we're willing to fall down and realize you're not made out of porcelain, you're supposed to fall down. This is the price for admission. This is how we learn. And adversity often hurts us first. It often pisses us off to get our attention, because it's trying to teach us a lesson.
Yep.
And if we can have that humility and learn that lesson and not repeat it over and over again, then we're stronger and wiser for the next encounter.
And you used the word learn there. Literally yesterday, I being in using socials to get reach to people, because I truly believe that what we do, and I say we, encompassing yourself and all the other people that I surround myself with, is helping others. And the quote that jumped in my head was, you either win or you learn, not you either win or you lose. And you mentioned learn. Now, we've spent 5 minutes talking about some nice philosophy, some ideas, but you, Marcus, are clearly, for me, the epitome of learning and not losing. So I know you've told your story so many times. I'm going to get you to tell a little bit. What happened to you to get you to this place? Let's talk through your accident, and then how you managed to overcome using the gift of adversity there. I think the listeners would really do well to have that picture painted of you.
Absolutely. The origin story, Marcus the Younger, that's where we began, right? Before I can tell that story, I have to tell a little bit about what led up to it.
Thank you.
I've done martial arts since I was 11. So I've had philosophy sort of in my life, kind of baked into it. Having a name like this, my grandfather gave me the name. As a young child, you don't understand who this person is. This person is a king or an emperor. I don't feel like a king or an emperor. So I actually went by Mark as a young boy, because Marcus felt too heavy, let alone the entire name.
Right.
Grew up, went through a lot of things, went to different schools, different educations. Finally, I went to chiropractic school in Atlanta, Georgia, and in Life University. The great thing about that school is there's a lot that you can learn there, but it definitely takes some time. At that point, I was married, and I'm going to chiropractic school, kind of killing myself trying to bartend to stay out of debt as much as I can,
Wow.
in addition to doctorate level courses, in addition to trying to maintain this new marriage. And I guess the big lesson for us is, if you try to prioritize everything, you can't, and then nothing becomes a priority. For me, I was going to school, I was working so hard in my mind for my marriage, so that when we got out, we could go out and do these things. But what happened was I prioritized that over my marriage, and my marriage fell apart, and that's my fault. Not long after that, my great uncle, who was my biggest male role model outside of my father, he passed away. And my great uncle was in Vietnam. He was in special forces. He was in long range reconnaissance patrols. So they would drop him off with a team. He was the team leader. They would find the enemy. They would make direct action. They would do whatever targets of opportunity were there, or sometimes they would just recon and get out quietly. It just depends on what was there. So I learned about that as I get older. But at the time, as a 12-year-old boy, he's the first one to take me out into the field craft, teach me gun safety, teach me humility, teach me about respect, teach me about embracing the hardship. And then I think back on his life and all the hardship he had gone through just in those tours alone, let alone coming back, spending all that time, and then coming back to this place where, when he came back, this is back in Vietnam. So literally, he was called a baby killer. He had people trying to spit on him when he came back. But even then, he understood that that wasn't what he was doing. That was what these people were projecting onto him. And he just was the quiet professional and continued on. Once he passed, and then I got divorced, it was this vicious 1-2 combination, knocks me on my ass. I'm at 38 years old at that point. And I'm like, okay, I don't have the will to go through school right now, because all the reasons I was doing it are kind of gone. I have no children, and I'd always wanted to join the military, and I always had a reason not to. So at 38, I go talk to the Army recruiter and say, what can we do? He asked me my age. He said 35 is the cutoff. And I was like, okay. So I turn on my heel to leave, and he says, well, how old are you? I told him, and he said, well, why do you want to be here? I kind of tell him what I told you. And he's like, well, are you smart? And I say, well, I'm talking to a recruiter at 38 years old. Do I sound smart to you, Sergeant? But what he was saying was, how would I do on an ASVAB placement test? Well, I'd already had all that education. I already have a degree in human biology. So taking an ASVAB course, that I crushed that. I score off the charts. And then for my age, I take the PT test, the physical requirement test, and I max that out. And he's like, okay, you're smart and you're in great shape. He's like, you can choose whatever job you want in the Army, whatever MOS you want. And I was like, I already know what I want to do. And he's trying to veer me towards all these other things. I was like, I want to go in the infantry. And he says, he kind of smiles and laughs. And he's like, Anderson, you don't get it. You can do whatever you want to do. And I was like, Sergeant, you don't get it. This is what I want to do. And if I don't get to do this, I'm going to walk down another path. And we go back and forth, and he shows me how with my degree, I can go in as an officer, and I can do all these things and have all these skills that will transfer directly into the civilian sector when I'm done. I was like, I just want to serve my country for a tour, at least for 4 or 6 years, and then get out, use the GI Bill to pay off the rest of my school. And then I can serve my country as a doctor with my hands, my community. And finally, he's like, manage your life. So he signs the release, slides it over. And then 6 months later, I'm getting out the bus at Fort Benning in Georgia, and I'm getting yelled at by guys that are younger than me, and I'm competing against guys half my age.
Yeah.
But it's interesting, when you commit to something 100%, like when you're jumping out of the aircraft, there's no other opportunity. It's either 100% or it's nothing.
Yeah.
And once we're in it, even though it's more than what we expected, even though there's adversity involved, it takes some of the pressure off, because now we know there's no turning back. I can't quit. And so for me, I trained like hell for 6 months leading up to infantry school. And then when younger guys are breaking their ankle or dislocating their shoulders or have like hip fractures because they can't take the weight of the rucksack on them, and I've already done the work, after a couple of weeks of that, I start to believe, oh, wow, I'm not going to get hurt. I'm not going to get recycled. I'm not going to get kicked out.
Yeah.
And then my mind starts to take over. So compared to a 19 or 20-year-old young man who's never lived outside of his home, compare that to a guy who's owned businesses, who's been married, who's lived a little bit of life. That was my advantage. And
so
then
your resilience is higher. Your comprehension of what's required is different. You've chosen that over the grass is greener sort of thing.
Absolutely. I had a little bit of natural leadership ability at that point too. So I could see where they were coming from. I could see what they were fearing, understood that I could talk to one guy the way that you do in the military. Other guys weren't as receptive. But if we can sense that, we know how to talk to them. Just like the 5 love languages, the same thing with leadership. Some people want to be verbally like prodded. Some people want to be verbally encouraged. Some people want to just be left alone verbally, and they'll go about it at their pace. And we have to be able to read the room, you know, just like in the military, the map is not the terrain. We have to be willing to get in there and see what it's like. Get through infantry school, get through all the advanced individualized training. And then I go to Fort Drum, which is in upstate New York, 30 miles south of the Canadian border. And I'm with 10th Mountain Light Infantry Division. So
is it 10th Mountain, or has it changed the name?
No, it's 10th Mountain Light Infantry Division. Yeah, 10th Mountain. And that's, if people have, you know, heard history about Blackhawk Down, Operation Anaconda, there's a lot of regalia and a lot of pride there. And I was very honored to be a part of that. As soon as I get there, they're like, we're in the middle of a training deployment. Like, we're getting ready to go. You're going to be leaving in 3 months. We're going to be in Afghanistan and in Patika province and Ambush Alley. So when I get there, I thought that the hard work that I did in infantry school was going to be the hardest thing I did. And then I actually found out what real hard work was, what a real soldier, what a real warrior goes through, you know, 2 or 3 weeks at a time in the field, sleep deprivation, not a lot of food, not a lot of water, because you're trying to simulate combat conditions, right? You go on a 8-hour patrol, which turns into a 48-hour mission to see what you can do, to see how you respond to that adversity. And as we continue to do that, I was really blessed to be around all these NCOs that had been in a lot of combat, that had been through a lot of different areas, from 101st, ex-Ranger, different things like that. And they really helped me see, because I came in very open-minded. It was like, I understand combat from a martial arts standpoint, one-on-one, but weapons, tactics, strategy, I could read stuff in a book, but it's not the same as actually going out there trying to conduct an L-shaped ambush, right?
That's what we said. That's what you said at the start. There's all this information, but if you don't action it, it's literally useless. It's not a real thing.
It's not. And then when you take in consideration sleep deprivation, when you take in consideration not knowing what you should be doing, taking consideration the skill set required once the adrenaline dumps into your body, can you even pull the trigger appropriately? Can you even get a sight picture? Do you understand if this is the enemy or not? Is this a blue on blue contact at this point? All your higher cognitive functions go out the window. So we would do a shoot house, which is clearing close quarter combat. We would do that for 24 hours straight, because they wanted to make sure that we had the protocol. They wanted to make sure that the one man goes through and he clears. The second man goes through on button hooks. Like, all these things, you do it so often that you can't get it wrong.
Yeah.
And even then, people still hesitate. Even then, people stand in the center of the room. Even then, people are slowing us all down, and we all get stacked up in the fatal funnel.
Yeah.
So it's what we have to do. We have to drill it so well that it becomes second nature, just like breathing. And then you may have a chance to survive, or you may have a chance to actually let your buddy survive too, right?
So you knew in that training you were going to combat. So literally, this is, you know, you said 6 months. So, you know, 6 to 9 months after you join the military, you know you're going into battle. So you're switched on and you've made that choice. It's a very different mindset than someone just joining the army. Yeah.
Yeah. But in my mind, I knew that I had to do that, because I knew that, like I say, I mean, if in the military, if I'm not squared away, if I'm not hydrated, I put my buddy's life in danger. If I don't have my ammo, if I don't have my special, any of my sensitive items, if I don't know where I'm supposed to go. Yeah. And at that point, I was getting promoted in positions pretty quickly. I was being given more responsibility. I was being sent to this school. I was being sent to this school. So I'm collecting all this intel, and I'm motivated. I'm reasonably intelligent, and I'm in shape. So, I mean, they'll hand anything to you if you're willing to take it, which is great. And so I was just ready for that. What was happening though is as the time went on, they pushed our deployment back. And where I was stationed in upstate New York, it's 30 miles south of the Canadian border. So it's cold. And we have the mountain effect from the mountains. And then we have the lake effect from Lake Ontario, which is there. So long story short, it means that it's always raining. And it means when it starts to get cold, which it gets cold quickly, it means it's always snowing. So that's why we were specialized in mountain warfare. You can drop us out of any airplane, any aircraft. We can either fast rope, we can be 20 miles or 20 clicks away from the target. We assault through quickly, efficiently, and then we go through the mission. So that's what we were training for. But I started getting, even then, some numbness in my hands and feet, like a little bit.
Right.
But I assumed it was because we're sleeping, because like we didn't have like tents. Like you have a bivy sack, you get a few hours sleep, you're sleeping on the cold ground.
Yeah.
And no matter how good your weather system is, you're still going to be cold. And then you're just pushing yourself as hard as you can. I was having a hard time holding on to the bar when we would try to do pull-ups outside. I was having a hard time feeling my feet. But when we would get back into garrison, take a hot shower, get warmed up, get some warm chow. And I was like, okay, this is better. But progressively, it kept getting worse and worse.
Wow.
Eventually, the week before my kind of realization, it got to the point where I couldn't feel my feet running. We had done a 50% ruck march that Monday. So you take half of your body weight, 50%, you put it in your ruck, then you put on your plate armor, you put on your gas mask, you carry your weapon, you have your helmet, you've got your water that freezes because you're up there. And now you're trying to do a 25-mile ruck march in the ice, because that's what you have to do. You have to have that sort of training. And my squad leader was like, this is not a march, this is a run. So you're at this like slow kind of airborne shuffle trot, trying to get where you need to go. And he always wanted to make sure that we were the first one, because we were the first squad. He's ex-recon from the Marines. So even whenever everybody else was asleep, he was waking us up. He's like, get your nods on, we're going for a walk, because getting used to night vision is difficult. So even when everybody else is sleeping, we're still out there trying to do tactics, trying to control, trying to assault through, trying to skirt the wood line with this stuff so that we can learn, because the learning curve was very, very high. We had to get there quickly. So that was where a lot of that urgency was. As the week progressed, I kept having more and more trouble holding on to things, more and more trouble putting on even like my uniform and my shoes.
Right.
By that Friday, I was to a place where I was barely able to move. I was just kind of swinging my legs. Luckily, because we've been training hard all week, the Friday, there wasn't a whole lot going on. We were doing a lot of paperwork, a lot of like PCCs and PCIs, pre-combat inspections, pre-combat checks for the following week, because we just come back out of the field and everybody's planning on going to go get food or whatever for that evening. And I realized that I needed to just get some sleep. Getting older, I'm 39 at that point, getting close to 40. And I'm just going to recover, sleep in, go do some squats and some deadlifts in the morning, and then I'll be ready for the next week. I go to bed, I wake up the next morning, I try to roll my head to get out of bed. My head articulates, but the rest of my body doesn't respond.
Wow.
So the chiropractic part of me goes through and does a quick eval. And it's like, if I do a body scan, things aren't moving. And I kind of chuckle for a second, because I'm like, oh, the old man's sore. This is just like a freak. A freak incident. This will happen for a couple of seconds and I'll snap to it. And then it becomes obvious that it's not. And as a little boy, I always had this dream that I would be running from something, but I was paralyzed and I couldn't move away from it.
Yeah.
So to me, this is literally my worst dream come true.
Wow.
And in the dream, I would try to look and see what was chasing me. I could never see it, but it felt like this was it in real life.
Wow. So what happened? What caused this, Marcus?
So this is just the accumulation, the attrition of training, but it was actually a disc in my neck that had ruptured.
Oh,
so it had been swollen for a long time, and that's where all the symptomatology was coming through.
yeah.
And honestly, in hindsight, like, I was in a lot of pain, but I also understood pain's part of the game. I get that. Just push that shit down, take some Ranger Candy, take some, ibuprofen, whatever it is, Motrin, and just suck it up and move on, because I don't have time to feel pain. I have to get ready to deploy. At that point, I had just been given my first team.
Wow.
So I have to square away all my guys. I have to be even better. I have to
So
be the standard.
you put your needs well behind everybody else's.
That's it. Because no matter how strong your team is, there's always one guy that's the weaker link, right? And we have to work extra hard to square him away. And we have to work extra hard to make sure that he's covered down. And so I don't really have the luxury of doing those other things for myself, but that's fine. That's what I want, because in my mind, we're going soon.
Yep.
There's a knock on my door at that point, and I yell through the door, I can't move, because they were coming up for an AAR for what we were about to do the following week, an after action report. And I yell through the door, I can't move. And I'm not the kind of guy that would really joke about that. And they say, okay, we're coming to get you. Knock down the door, grab me, and now I'm on my way to the hospital because they don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
And as silly as it sounds, I still have that warrior idea of, man, I hope this isn't something serious. I hope they can just give me a shot and I can get back, because I got people that are, counting on me.
Yeah.
And this is what I'm supposed to do. This is what my destiny is. That's why all this other stuff happened to me in my life, to put me in this position to be here. At that time, 10th Mountain was the most deployed unit in the history of the military. Like, they were deploying detached. They would attach to Delta Force. They would attach to Rangers. They would attach to Special Forces. They would attach to envoys. And then they would have their own deployments. So we were going all the time.
Yeah.
And they kept pushing this deployment back. They put me in the hospital. They gave me an MRI. They find out that my disc is ruptured on my neck. I know what that means, but I don't know how bad it can be. It's C5, between C5 and C6. So for the people that still remember, there's a guy named Christopher Reeve. He was an actor. He was the original Superman back in the day, in the 80s, I think.
Yep.
He had an equestrian accident. Yeah, I did too. Yeah, he was awesome. And he fell off of a horse. He had an equestrian accident, and he was injured in the same place, and he was paralyzed from the neck down for the rest of his life.
Yeah.
So they give me some pain medication, and then they say, we're going to prep you. And I was like, for what? And they were like, for surgery, dumbass.
Wow.
And I'm a guy from the Midwest. Like, I was in the hospital when I was born, and then had bumps and bruises and stitches here and there, but I never had to go to the hospital for anything serious. Starting to have a hard time even breathing at that point, because my diaphragmatic nerves and everything are just shutting down.
Wow.
And I remember asking, I was like, is this necessary? Like, can you not just give me a shot or get somebody to adjust my neck or whatever? And the nurse is like, you're having a hard time breathing, huh? And I was like, yeah. She's like, you're going to suffocate because the nerves in your body are shutting down.
Wow.
So it makes it obvious that I don't really have much of a choice. They wheel me down to the operating area. There's a big team of people outside, and I'm like, are you guys here for me? And they all kind of chuckle, but it doesn't make me feel any better, because if it takes a dozen people in one room to make sure that I don't die,
yeah,
and that's not what I need to hear. But talking to them, it made me feel better. They were like, listen, I'm the anesthesiologist. This is the backup anesthesiologist. These are the two surgeons that are going to be working in tandem no matter what happens. This is the nurses, the backup. So it was like a really squared away fire team, but that doesn't really help me when they're getting ready to go in there and they say, put the mask on and count down from 100. I count down. It gets very dark. It's very cold.
What number did you get to?
I got to 98. I got
always
into.
I'm going to get to 0, and I get to.
And it never happens. And it's very cold and it's very dark. And then I wake up in the ICU confused.
Yeah.
Was this a dream? Am I AWOL? And what movement that I had in my neck is completely arrested because they have me in a huge neck brace now.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to move, trying to talk to the nurse. My voice is raw. And the nurse is like, don't try to talk right now. Just try to relax. You're safe. You're in an okay spot. In and out for a while. Surgeon eventually comes in at the foot of the bed and he's like, man, you're lucky. And I was like, how am I lucky? He said, we lost you.
Wow.
And I'm like, how do you lose me on this 180-pound, big guy over here? And they were like, no, like you flatlined and we didn't know if you're going to get you back the second time. So all that coldness and all that darkness that I was experiencing was kind of that transition, I guess.
Wow. And the things you see on TV and hear about.
Yeah, the flatlining stuff, and it's interesting. But he tells me that, and he has a very congratulatory tone, and he says, you're lucky to be alive. And so I'm like, yeah. When do I get to walk again? And he's like, the good news is you get to live to tell the tale. The bad news is this is what you're left with.
They thought you were a paraplegic.
So at 40 years old, I'm broke, divorced, bedridden, and paralyzed. I've given everything to this mission, and it's completely taken away from me. And now I'm like, what do I do with my life?
Wow.
And it's beyond that. Having the physicality, you probably did sports growing up, playing rugby, playing everything. So that was my identity. I was always good at that. I could pick up things faster than other people, or I believed that I could. But to have that physicality, to have that independence ripped away from you, in addition to this purpose that was so burning within you, this destiny that you're supposed to fulfill, and now realizing at 40 years old, I may have another 40 years of life on this earth, and it may be like this. And that's not living as far as I was concerned. So I'm in that place trying to figure out what the hell do I do now? And had a lot of denial.
What do they do? And I hope it's not interrupting, I hope it's adding. What do the hospitals do for mental health support at that stage? I mean, the reason I jumped in was identity. When I interview the veteran side, it's always that identity for transition, but you literally in 1 second has changed. What do they have for psychological support?
There's really not a lot, if I'm honest, because for the first week that I was there, they just wanted to make sure I was good and I was stable. And during that week, I'm in denial. I'm like, well, I'm going to get up. I'm going to walk this thing off.
Yeah.
I'm talking myself into it. The doctor says I died. If I can overcome that death thing, I can walk this thing off. And we have that kind of warrior hubris. Like we have to believe that we can overcome any odds. We have to, we're trained on missions that are impossible specifically to see what we'll do under pressure. Right.
Yeah.
And even when we're in that place, sometimes if we push on one more time, sometimes we win. Right. So it's about being willing to empty the tank and wring out everything that you have. But here I have no control. Here I can't do anything. Here I'm just basically in a bed watching TV, and they're coming in and they're putting meds in my IV, keeping me drugged up. And I'm able to kind of, again, be in this place of denial until they come and get me and collect me and take me back to my base.
Yeah.
Now it's real.
Yeah.
Now they're putting me in the warrior transition unit. Now they're taking all of my stuff out of my home.
Yeah.
They're packing all that stuff up. You don't have to worry about that now. So now I'm trying to get answers, and I'm sure the military is the same way it is over here. Everything that we do is compartmentalized. We know this amount of information into this box, and outside of that, we don't know.
Yeah.
And until somebody tells us, who's also in a very compartmentalized position, they're doing what they know. But there's no hard and fast rules. There's no necessarily SOP, standard operating procedure for this. It is what it is. Stand by to stand by. And I'm just waiting. And I'm like, so now what? Do I get to do physical therapy? Just stand by. So for months, I'm just in that bed. And I went from preparing for battle on the war, on the battlefield, to this war within my mind. And now I'm to the second stage. I'm beyond denial. I'm in the anger stage.
Yeah.
Because of regret, because I'm thinking about all the shit that I wish I had done. I thought about all the times I said that I'm going to do it tomorrow. I thought about all those times I would binge on Netflix or catch a nap when I could have been doing something else, when I should have been doing something else.
Can I pause and just investigate that a little bit? It's very rare that someone would have the opportunity to question someone like yourself who's been through that experience, Marcus, because we all go, well, if you died tomorrow, what would you know? What would you, if you had 24 hours to live, what would you do? All these hypothetical crap. But now, because we know you're on the other side, you look amazing and you're successful. Your outlook on regret, on not doing things you have done, has that changed? So it's, as a direct question, has that changed your I'm trying to, it's an interesting question. I'm thinking about that Jim Carrey movie, the Yes Man. You know, he had to say yes to everything, so you get to experience so many things. What is your outlook on life now, given you actually went through that phase, on missing out or doing things or procrastination? That's the question. What's your outlook on life now with procrastination and getting things done in your life?
Man, it'll put a fire under you like nothing else. But here's the other part that people don't understand. As human beings, we get acclimated to something. We get accustomed to something. We can adapt to almost anything when we have enough time and no other choice, because when there's no other choice, the choice is simple. We have to adapt. So even me being tethered to adversity for as long as I was, when I got away from it, when I transitioned into the civilian sector, that was even harder because I didn't know what to do with my life now.
Yeah.
I've lost all this muscle mass. I'm not like overweight, but I'm not in the kind of shape that I need to be in. I still can't do chiropractic because I still have neuropathy in my fingers. I'll go back to the school. They're like, sorry, you don't have the physicality to do this. So now I'm having to relearn everything. I don't know what to do. And there's a book by Robert Greene when he talks about mastery. And he says, when you don't know where to go back to the beginning. And so for me, it was like, I literally came back to the town that I was born in. I literally went back to martial arts, trying to understand, can I do martial arts? Can I hold a blade? Can I draw a weapon, a firearm? Can I transition? Can I even make a fist to throw a punch properly? Can I do anything on the ground in jiu-jitsu? Can I do Wing Chun? Can I do any of this stuff?
Right.
And that was the beginning of my physical therapy, because these were muscle patterns that have been built in for a long time. But it's one thing to remember them. It's another thing to be able to do them consistently. It's another thing to be able to do them in a very dynamic environment when the punches are coming or when the blade's coming toward your throat, or when you're trying to transition from the pistol to the blade, whatever it is. That was the thing that helped me begin to truly take my power back and to believe that there may be something still for me.
So are you rewriting that a little bit? Because you said you've gone back to literally where you were born. Are you sort of rewriting it in a better way? Is that what's going on?
I was hoping that there was something that I would either be, because in life, we learn the lessons, right? But oftentimes it takes adversity to make us remember the things that we forgot. We overlook, we take it for granted. They say you don't know what you got till it's gone, but that's not true. We assume that we will always have it. And that's the truth. So if you're financially successful this year, you assume you're going to be successful next year. That's not a guarantee. If you're alive today, you may assume you're alive next year. That's not a guarantee. Relationships, marriages, friendships, whatever it is. And that's what we have to understand. That's why I have this sort of urgency, this octo nonverbal mentality. And that urgency makes me even more selective. It makes me even more specific about what I choose to do. If everything's a priority, then nothing's a priority. That's why, again, doing a podcast with you, as you saw, I was selective. I researched. I made sure you were who you said you were. I made sure that you weren't just somebody that was trying to talk to me because I have these things going on, right? And that's why.
Thank you.
When the TEDx came out, when the book came out, and I had all this attention, I said yes to everything because I was afraid. I was afraid this is the only opportunity I'm going to have. This is my 15 minutes. I better jump on it.
Yeah.
In the meantime, I learned a lot, but I also find that I would rather speak to your audience because I know the people that are here want to get better. I know the people here are trying to put things into play. I also know that they have a lot of potential that they may not be unlocking yet. And that something that we say during this conversation may be that single domino that falls. And maybe that one way that we say it that's different than anybody else has said it. How many times have we had somebody say things like, you know, the way that you said it, it just made a lot of sense. I've heard that many times, but the way that you said it makes sense. Or maybe we simplify it and we strip away all the BS and we get down to the brass tacks. That's the beauty of adversity. It burns away everything that's not true in us. It shows us who we are. And a lot of times we don't like it. But that's the only way to have any idea of where we can go. If we don't know where we're on the map, if we don't know where we are right now, it doesn't matter what direction I go. It doesn't matter how good of an azimuth I shoot. Because if I don't know where I'm at, if I can't be honest about that, and then if I'm looking at all these things about me that are ugly, all these warts, all these things that I didn't do, if we as human beings do that, if we look at anything, even the most magnificent piece of art, if it is made by man, it's fallible. There's imperfections in it. That's part of the beauty. That's part of what makes it unique. But you have to be willing to embrace all of it to have a chance to either correct it or accept it so that you can work on the things that you are good at or the things that you do enjoy or these passions or these things that really drive you, that push you in the direction towards the thing that is fulfilling, that makes you level up. But if we're not willing to do that and we just artificially pacify ourselves with cheap dopamine from a phone you're listening to us. So I respect that you're listening to us. But again, I would rather you listen to this single podcast and not listen to anything else for the next month and just journal about how this made you feel. What was the most important thing? Put that into play. I don't care if you read 52 books a year. People are like, I read a book a week. It's like, well, you skim a book a week.
Yeah.
And you may have a couple of quotes that stick out for you, but I would rather you take 4 books that are powerful, read those things, digest those things, learn those things, and say, if adversity is a gift, how can I apply that to my life right now? If adversity is teaching me something, where in my life am I facing adversity? And what is it teaching me? What am I not seeing? What am I claiming that I don't know? Is it an uncomfortable conversation I don't want to have with my wife, a coworker? Do I need to fire somebody who's toxic to our company? Do I need to call myself on my own bullshit because I'm asking other people to maintain a standard that I cannot live, that is not sustainable? These are all the things that we have to ask. And when we do that kind of self-reflection, it comes down to everything, right? It doesn't matter what you know, doesn't matter what you've learned. If you don't know who you are, you don't know anything.
And I'm just trying to unpack what you're saying there a little bit. The gift of adversity, really what you're saying is it strips away all the layers and shows you where you are right now. When I say where, there might be who as well, but it shows right now in this place, my back's against the wall. I have no other way forward. Would that be a correct analogy?
It absolutely is. Adversity shines a light on all of our weaknesses. It shows us where the chink in our armor is. And here's the thing. If we can learn the lesson and not just try to gloss over it or put our fingers in our ear and go, la, 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 act like it's not there, then that is the opportunity for us to learn. And now we can be stronger. How many people understood that they should have a certain amount of savings? And then when 2020 hits in March, the whole world changes. And now everybody's like, oh, I wish I had a better war chest. That's a lesson, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of lessons from the housing markets. I'm 50 years old now. So I've had the honor of living enough life to see that adversity is en route as we speak in some capacity.
Yeah.
So I'm not afraid of it. I've made peace with it. I know that it's part of it, but I also know that during these big breaks that I have where there is no adversity, it gives me even more urgency because I know that it's coming. I know that it's going to be here.
I love words. I've understood what the word transition was interviewing guys about 4 months ago. But I didn't quite understand the word adversity, and I'm relating that to selection for anything you got to go through, any crucible. I think that's a way of putting it, but for different special forces is my example. But what we don't get is another word. We don't get concentration, like I think you would have had, because you're literally in a neck brace. You have nothing else. Would that be true? Would it be true that you got to concentrate your focus, concentrate your thoughts on overcoming this, using this adversity and stepping forward? Is that what that position put you in?
It did, but I had an indirect approach, as we would say, right? I didn't take the normal avenue of approach. I went in denial, and I stayed in the anger phase for a long time.
Which we lift off of.
Yeah, I was not a good man to be around. The medication they would put me on would kill the pain, but it would just turn me into an ass. I was not respectful. I was not nice. And to all those people that took care of me, I should be grateful for that. Then I go into the bargaining stage, the third phase, which is where I'm playing the victim. Why does this happen to me? I'm a good person. There are a bunch of other shitbags out there that are getting all this great stuff, and I'm here. There are people that are not good people. There are evil people in the world, and they're left to just profit and do whatever. And I allowed myself to paint myself into the corner. And now no matter what happened, I'm pessimistic.
Yeah.
I'm pissed off at everybody else. I'm jealous of everybody else. And I just sit there and just woe is me the whole time. Eventually you have to go beyond that. You have to go to this depression, is the fourth stage of acceptance. You have to go through depression before you can actually get to the place of acceptance to begin to recover. But it never happens that neatly. You'll go into denial and be pissed off, right? And now you go back to anger because this isn't fair. And then you won't want to think about that because you don't want to imagine that your life is just falling apart. So you go back to denial.
Yeah.
And then you wake up the next day and you're still in that bed and you're like, God, you go right back to the regret and the anger, back into denial, back into bargaining, back into this victim mentality. And you'll be asking why. And then you'll go through and unpack everything that's happened in your life. And you'll find things, maybe this is karma. Maybe this is the universe. Maybe this is God's way of punishing me for some stuff that I did that I was mean to somebody about. And what happens is that becomes the most disempowering type of mentality that you can have.
Mm. Yeah,
what you have to do is, you have to take all the emotion out of it. Emotions assassinate the truth. It makes it impossible for you to really see what's going on. So when you're in it, all you have to do, because adversity shows up unannounced at the most inopportune time without apology, it couldn't care less about what you want. It doesn't give a damn about your feelings. And adversity doesn't take no for an answer. It forces you to up your game and go to a higher level. It never lets you coast or do just enough to get by. It knows what you're really capable of, even if you do not. And that's why it kicks our ass when we don't give 100%. That's what it is. It is this entity. So for me, I was just in that place. Finally, I stopped asking why, because there's no answer that's going to satisfy me because I'm still here. If we continually ask questions like that, but there's no answer that can possibly make us get into a better place, we're wasting our time and our energy. For me, I had to find something that was the opposite of where I was, opposite of anger, opposite of hate, opposite of a victim. And the opposite of that for most people is love, if we're being honest. Where I was, there was not that. There wasn't anything really like that, if I'm being very honest.
Well, none for yourself, and it all starts there. So I'm sorry to throw the realization in there.
It's the truth. It's the truth. Because I was so angry, disappointed, upset with myself.
Mm.
And so I went the other direction. The only thing that I could find that was different was gratitude. And I know everybody talks about gratitude. I know it's a big buzzword, but listen, most of the people that have gratitude or are using gratitude or have a gratitude practice are doing it wrong. They're bullshitting themselves. They have like a little list of things that they're grateful for, and that's fine. That's a good way to reinforce. But So many of those people will put their hands firmly under their feet or under their lap, and they'll sit down, and the entire world around them, their entire world that they could have some control over, that's just running around them. There's like a tornado and everything is just going crazy. And they say, oh, but I'm grateful. And that's the glorified victim mentality.
That's that classic think positive that doesn't work.
That's it. And if they can play the victim and say that they're grateful, then there's no responsibility.
Yeah.
And that becomes their identity. They become the person who can't do anything because, oh, their life is so bad. And they're the kind of people that try to one up you with shit. They're the kind of people that try to out adversity you like it's a competition. Oh, you think your day was bad? Well, listen to mine. And then they can't wait to do that because that's what their identity is. They find something to try to tear down. For me, the gratitude that I found, and this goes back to the philosophy, goes back to Stoicism, Taoism, Zen. In my mind, I kept asking, okay, this is happening to me for a reason. I had to figure out what it is. And we cannot see the gift of adversity when we're in the fray. When we're in the heat of battle, it's almost impossible. We have to get beyond it, out of it. We have to survive it in some capacity to have the ability to reflect. We have to have hindsight now as much as we can, but it's hard to put into play, especially when you're in the heat of adversity. Having said that, I kept asking myself, what was the lesson? What's the opportunity in this? And I kept thinking, no. But it was because I was thinking of me. I believe that injury would have happened to me no matter where I was in the globe, right? So if we were in Germany preparing to go to the Middle East, if we were in Afghanistan on a patrol outside the wire in a hot zone, this still would have happened to me. And for every one man that is injured in combat, it takes 2 men deploying to safety. So now what? Now I've endangered my team. Mm-hmm. Another team has to cover down. A platoon has to cover down for them. A big target called a Chinook has to fly into a hot zone with half a dozen people on it, right? So now I realize, wow, I'm lucky. I'm not lucky, but I am just grateful that nobody else was injured.
Yeah.
Right? There could have been dozens of other people whose lives would have been put in harm's way. And listen, I understand that as warriors, we signed that paper. We know that. We know that going in. But for me, that's all that I had. But man, it was something. And it was the beginning. It was the cornerstone because I actually believed it. I actually was grateful for it, and I gained nothing from it. Gratitude is a verb. You have to show people that you are grateful. If you lead a team, they can tell that you're grateful for them, even if you don't say it, just in the way that you conduct yourself around them. Maybe if you can verbalize it, that probably helps them too, right? Just like a person walks in a room and you can feel the entire energy suck out. Or there's a person that walks in the room and you can tell that they love you just by the way that they act, or that they're pissed off at you because they're not making eye contact. Not a word is said.
Well, 93% of communication is nonverbal.
It's absolutely nonverbal. So if you are grateful, you will have a grateful posture. You'll smile at people. You'll hold the door open for people. You'll buy somebody's gas. You'll buy their groceries. You'll do something simple. It doesn't take much to make somebody's day.
Can I pause there again? This seems to be an English lesson. You talked about holding the door open for someone. I listened to Eddie Jocko, another TED talk, The Happiest Man on Earth. And unfortunately, he's passed away now, so I don't get the chance to speak to him. But concentration camp survivor, I think 4 or 5 concentration camps, literally Auschwitz, saw his parents taken away and killed. Horrible story. Survived the war. He's pissed off. What word did you use? He's an ass to be around. And he just got married, and he made a decision, I think 2 years into it, he made a decision to be kind, which I'm not sure, my English is very terrible. Is it an adjective? But whatever it was, he did something. So that's an interesting one, piggybacking, dovetailing with what you're doing there, because you spoke about an action there, opening the door, or the body posture, though making a decision to be kind then causes that flow-on effect as well, just to add to the mix. Marcus.
It's true. And it reinforces, right? It creates gravity. It creates momentum.
Right.
So adversity has a momentum, right? There's no single iteration in infantry school or any kind of crucible that will break you, but it's the accumulation of them. And then when you start thinking about, shit, I'm not even through the first 2 weeks of the hell phase, red phase, hell week, red phase.
Yeah.
How am I going to get through here? You're already handicapping yourself.
Yeah.
But if you're just like, okay, they said do burpees, they say burpees go, you just go. You don't ask, why am I doing this? You're not cussing under your breath. You're not pissed off that it's 2 a.m. and that they pull the fire alarm and you're in the rain. It doesn't serve you. You're wasting time and energy. And when you remove that resistance to it and you just allow it to flow through you, it doesn't get stagnant. It doesn't stay in you. It doesn't create anxiety. It doesn't create this cycle. I just let it go.
Well, that's what you said about emotions assassinating the truth, because it's not the truth. You're now imagined events.
That's it. Because every event is neutral, right? Yeah. It doesn't mean anything until we assign what the purpose is to it. And now we have an emotion that's evoked from that. And now we may or may not act on that emotion based on the thought pattern. But again, opening the door. In my book, I tell a story about how I tried to open a door for a woman when I lived in a part of the country called Kansas City when it was very cold. It was raining. I'm sorry, it was snowing. I go to walk to the bank. I see through the reflection on the glass that somebody's walking behind me. I just instinctively open the door. I don't know, frankly, if it is a man or woman because she's all bundled up. She stops. She looks at me. She looks at the door. She looks at me. She looks at the door. And then she says, do you know that when you open the door for me, that you take my power?
Interesting.
Right. So I'm just kind of holding the door, my jaws agape, and and then she says, would you have held the door open for me if I was a man? I was like, frankly, I couldn't tell what you were. I was just, you're a human being. I'm opening the door and I said, good morning. Yeah. And she said, well, I wouldn't have opened the door for you. And I said, okay, I hope I didn't offend you. Have a great day. I think I mumbled something along those lines, and I walk in. That glass door closes. There's a second set of doors that I go in. She waits until I get through all those sets of doors before she walks in. She goes to one teller, I go to another, and it bothered me. It bothered me for the rest of that day.
Yeah.
And because I grew up this very chivalrous, very be good to people. And then now it's about my ego, right? How dare she think that that's what I was doing? I was doing the right thing. I'm a good guy. That's not fair to me. And then by the end of the night, when I'm brushing my teeth, I was like, that wasn't about me at all. That's about her. Something's happened to her. Something similar to that either happened to her, or the symbolism of me reminding her of a person that maybe took her power. Maybe she was assaulted by a person in the same situation. Maybe I just reminded her. Whatever it was, that was her. So again, the event, the door opening, is neutral. The meaning that I attached to it with my intention, it was not the meaning that she got from it. And so instead of being upset about it, I was just like, I hope she's all right. I hope that she's not still upset about it, right? Like, I hope that she's not at home crying about it or pissed off or taking it out on somebody else. But we can't see that in the moment many times, or we can try to. But then as it escalates, many times we escalate with it. So that's why it's so important. When I went back to that place of having that true gratitude, real gratitude, not the bullshit gratitude, that was the building block for me. And then soon I was able to stack gratitude for the bed that I'm living in, for the room that I won't leave, for the nurses that take care of me and put up with my bullshit. And that was the beginning. And a week after I started doing that, I started getting a little bit of feeling back on my left hand, a little bit of movement, just a touch. And it wasn't a lot, but to me, it changed the world.
Yeah, of course.
And so I was grateful for that. And then I had hubris. Then I forgot the lesson. See, I knew I could do it. I got that soldier arrogance back. And I kind of stagnated. And I began to slowly backslide.
Wow.
And within 2 weeks, I'm right back where I was. And I'm back in the same place. I can't believe this is happening, but I go through all the stages again and finally realize, even if this is all that I have, even if this is the way I am for the rest of my life, I can either play the victim and be pissed off for the rest of my life, or I can at least try to employ like genuine gratitude. And slowly over months, I started getting a little bit of feeling back again. And then I never allowed myself to go back to that place of arrogance, of hubris, of taking my eye off the ball. So even when I got out, there's still that urgency within me. When I first got out, it was like almost a fear-based drive, but I've been able to rein it in now. And now I'm in that delicate, because in life, there's never balance. It's just the ability to adapt, right? The ability to, if I'm riding this wave, if I'm balanced, I'm in this stationary place and everything stops and nothing's moving. But that eventually changes. There's a lot of dynamics. So for me now, it's about focusing on what is truly a priority, pouring into the things and the people and the events that mean the most to me, that are going to make the most impact with the people that really want to know this information. I remember there was a person that had me on their podcast. They had millions of listeners. They showed me all the statistics and stuff, and I was impressed. But that didn't mean anything if what I'm saying doesn't resonate with them, or if they're disagreeing with me outright, or if they don't believe it, or if they've never been in a place of adversity in their life. I'm realizing now that there are people that have come up in first world countries that may never have had any sort of adversity in their life. Now, the pandemic changed that for a lot of people. But up until that point, the only adversity that they faced was mediocrity. And frankly, they couldn't even see it because they were in it, right? Like a fish in water.
Absolutely. I was just thinking back to something you said near the start of it. Adversity strips it all away. It's a slight tangent, but when you said first world countries, I was a police officer for a couple of years here out of the military. And where I live in Western Australia, in Perth, is a very interesting place. But to keep it super short, I found the 18 to 30-year-old demographic had sort of never been told no by their parents. There's some reasons why, financial reasons and other things, but literally the first, and it was worse with females, you'd see a female doing something she shouldn't, and I won't be graphic, but I'd come along as a police officer, you can't do that, or whatever I'm going to say in the right way, the right communication. And they literally would be like a little child. Yes, I can. You can't tell me what to do, and don't touch me until the cuffs go on. And I agree with you totally that in first world countries, and we said we come back from operations as well, that they're fairly spoiled, and that doesn't do them any service for their own, standing on their own 2 feet, for taking that first step, like you said. And they're expectant that, and it's almost that victim mentality, that they're irresponsible, going back to some notes that I'm taking from your quotes. Yes. They're not responsible for themselves. So yeah, I would suggest, I concur that it's come from that lack of adversity.
That's it. And we're in a place where we can avoid it most of the time. We can, if we have this emotion that we don't like, instead of sitting with it, instead of trying to figure out where the hell it's coming from, we can get on TikTok or whatever it is and just change our biochemistry for that moment. And then we can watch stuff all night until we're so tired that we're just falling asleep, eating horrendous food that we can order from the phone. We don't even have to get up, or the hardest thing we have to do is go answer the door when they ring the doorbell, right? I mean, it's a very lavish life for people in first world countries. And I'm not trying to shame people. I am trying to say, though, that, listen, our bodies were designed to walk 30 miles a day, to hunt giant animals, to kill them and to drag them back to the cave. We push our bodies. I did David Goggins 4x4x48 challenge. I ran 4 miles every 4 hours for 48 hours straight. I've done it for the last 2 years because it reminds us of what we're capable of.
Yeah.
So on days when it's like, oh, I'm tired, or I don't feel like doing this, or whatever it is, it's like you can give yourself some of that, and you have to reflect and say, am I really tired? I mean, if I had a horrible night of sleep, or if I'm, if there's things in life, that's fine. I could give myself that compassion. But at the same time, if I'm just allowing myself to feel tired, if I'm giving myself that out, here's the thing. The way that we respond to adversity is an indication of how we will respond to everything else in our life.
That's why selection's there.
That's it.
That's
exactly
why
it.
we do that. And that's why people look up to SF people, because they are slightly more capable, because they've been shown that, not because they're a better person. Their arrogance is there as a soldier than as an SF guy.
Yes.
It's instilled in the tribe, but we don't walk around like that. We've just shown, we were given the opportunity to then show that we could be more capable. I think I've never thought about it until we've chatted. You went through that adversity in different ways. The adversity was 38 years old, Marcus, and you literally said, I've been waiting the whole hour to get this one. You said it was your fault. You took responsibility.
Yes.
That's the adversity you went through in that small part, and then you realize, okay, I'm going to make a change here. It was my fault that the relationship didn't work, so you're going to change direction. It's taking responsibility. Yeah,
we have to do that. I mean, until we do, we can't change anything. If we live under this illusion that we get it backwards, we think that we can control what other people are thinking or feeling or going to do. And then we completely forget that the only thing that we can control are our thoughts, our actions, and our beliefs that inform those thoughts and actions. That is it. Yeah. I can't control the weather, no matter if I want it to rain or not. I can't control what this other person is going to do. I can control me. I can control how I respond. Again, Viktor Frankl, all these things that we kind of hear from these people that have gone through these extreme things. And it sounds very, very simple. But in combat, complexity is the enemy of execution. In the heat of battle, I don't have the luxury of being philosophical. I have to know that I can move forward. I have to know that I have the skill set. And like you said, by pushing myself to a high level, whether it be physically or emotionally or spiritually, like I have, now when something happens and you have a person that flips you off in the car, you can kind of smirk and you're like, just kind of wave to them. It's like, they're not a threat. That person's unhappy. That person has other stuff going on. I had this thing called the adversity skill, where at the very top of it, the 10 is the hardest thing you've ever done in your life. And you can imagine whatever that is, whether it be selection, whether it be a divorce, whatever it is. And then you look at what you're bitching about right now. And if you're complaining that the Wi-Fi is slow, or that your latte is not hot enough, as I say in the TEDx, right? Most of what we experience is not pain, it's discomfort. Most of our problems are maybe inconveniences at best. So we have to understand that, we have to acknowledge that, and then say, okay, on the grand scheme of things, this person that cut me off and gave me the bird, on a scale of 1 to 10 of adversity, it's maybe a 2. And if that's the case, and if that's true, then why am I allowing it to piss me off? Why am I allowing it to get in my head? Why am I even allowing it to get me off track? That shouldn't even be there. Let that go.
What a clever tool you've invented, because the woman said some words to you when you open the door, but then when you rate it, level of importance, that then gives you the power, more importantly, maybe the reason why you can let it go.
That's exactly it. So when people have this gratitude practice of writing things down, I ask people not to do that. I ask them to think of the thing that pissed them off that day or that week. And now that you have some distance, look at it. Why did it make you so mad? And then what was the gift in the adversity? What did you learn? What did it point out to you? Adversity has always given us lessons. The question is, am I learning these lessons? Or am I going to continue to repeat the same mistake over and over again, and then call that repetition of mistakes my life? We don't have the luxury of living any other kind of life. We have to decide what we're going to do. If we want it, we have to go out and take it. But anything worth having is guarded by adversity. Anything. If it's an easy route, if the path that you're following is well maintained, it's not your path.
It's not worth having. That's a very powerful statement you said. I've done the reverse of that. What I heard when you said that. Anything worth having, diversity's in the way. Wow, that's really telling. But how good do you feel? I mean, we had our kids the other day. We bought some furniture for one of their rooms. I made the 7-year-old, the 9-year-old, and 11-year-old build it themselves. And how good do they feel afterwards? I asked them, what, I mean, $90. If they totally ruined it, which they didn't, what do I lose? Right. And they felt so good at the end of it. And we tried to celebrate that because it was a little bit adverse.
Yes, that's it. We give them these micro adversities, right? These little bitty ones.
Yeah.
And if they fall down, it's not going to hurt them. They get back up, and we're right there. If they do have a boo-boo, then we say, oh, you're fine. And we give them that encouragement that they need. But that's the only way that they're going to have any opportunity to have the resilience that they need. And here's the thing, even all the simulation in the world is not the same as when it actually hits us. But if you don't have anything to give you even a fighting chance to survive it, it's over. It's too late. That person is going to stay in that place. On my podcast on Octa Nonverba, I've asked literally hundreds of people, what's the worst adversity that you went through? And what did you learn from it? And then I always follow up and say, what is it that allows one person to stay in that place of being the victim and they never grow out of it, and the other person to go beyond it? And that's what the questions we have to ask ourselves. I ask those questions in my TEDx. I say, if you woke up tomorrow paralyzed from the neck down, what do you wish you would have accomplished with your life? And I'm not saying that as a platitude. I'm not saying that as shock value. I lived it. I know those questions will change your life because they changed mine. And if you can even take it a little bit seriously, if you can even meditate on it or journal on it or think about it when you go for a walk or when you're at the gym, maybe that will give you an insight that you didn't have any other way.
I can see why you're at where you are now, Marcus. And that's why I said at the start, when we're just off camera, I'd love to organically get to know someone on a live show. You said to tell the story, you got to get to Marcus the Younger. And I was like, okay, I wonder how this guy got through this being paralyzed, and there was a mindset thing, and then there was the physical thing. But you've concentrated, again, let's think about what the hell that word actually means. Yeah. You've concentrated those successes. I asked you an interesting question, and if I'd given enough time, I would have got the answer here. About coming through that, what would you reflect back on with that Jim Carrey example? But you trained yourself like a little baby to re-walk, because you asked the question just before about you said about little challenges, little mini adversities, and I would suggest that a baby who's lying on its belly that can't even roll over yet, for the mums and dads, we know what that was like. We had to get them to roll over. Trying to walk is climbing Mount Everest. Wow, I mean, what a reverse or positive spin on it. You got to redo that. Yeah. And you got to rekindle that flame. Am I right? Am I on the right track here?
No, you're absolutely right. I was in that bed for 4 months and I unpacked everything.
Yeah.
Because I was going to start from where I was and go backwards, but I tried to go back to the beginning. My parents were divorced when I was 8. That's adversity. How did that affect me? How does that inform my decisions, right? And so I just tried to go through everything like that string, and I would just put a knot anytime there was something significant that had happened, and I would untie that thing, and I would look at it and say, what's the gift in this? Where's the opportunity in this? Maybe years later I can see it. And of course, with enough hindsight, we can. But it's impossible to really know what you believe until you're facing genuine adversity. We all had this pristine vacuum, but we have no clue. Even soldiers, right? In infantry school, you have a young guy, PT stud, great shape, best guy. And then we go to the grenade range and that guy freezes up.
Yeah.
and we have to pull him, not because there's anything wrong with him, not because he's a failure, but because he will get men killed in combat. But that's why we learn it, right? That's why we do that in a controlled environment. We have to do that. We have to know what's going on. We have to be able to trust the guy next to us, right? That's what we have to be able to do. We have to be willing to put our life on the line for the guy next to us. We do not want to be the guy that has to knock on that door and say, you know what? I'm sorry, Mrs. Jones, but because I wasn't squared away and I wasn't doing what I was supposed to do, your son doesn't get to come home.
Yeah, that's comes back to that responsibility that you spoke about.
Yeah, it's response-able, right? We respond, we don't react.
Marcus, I always have a basic framework of the interview as we go. I'd like to leave your story there because you've given such a beautiful intro to it and little insights and things that I think it would be a disservice for people not to go and look at your TED talk, or to look at your book, to look at the audio book and hear it in your words in a much more expanded version. I think we'd only, I think disservice. I'll leave it at that. I won't try and mince words. You've really elucidated your journey and what you've put together there so well. I'm absolutely stunned. And right at the start, when you talked about fault, I just wanted to add to that. I was taught a long time ago, TIME spells love.
I love that.
You spoke about, where you put your time and your focus into and your study and so on. But I just want to say thank you for sharing such wisdom. I mean, I create the title from what someone says in the show. I've got some amazing gold there, and I'm absolutely blown away at what you've said. But actions, not words, 100% agree there. But yeah, it's not often that I get lots of words, but I definitely am from your story. It's absolutely amazing to hear where you're at. And a few times I've seen that passion come through in you, because you've got that fire in your belly. That was literally your words for pushing forwards, for acting this life we've got. It's beautiful to see, mate.
Thank you. I just hope I can do that for someone else, inspire them, push them, give them that kick in the ass that they need. The reality is this: we only have so much time to do the things that are really important to us, and that time is dwindling. Like, whether you realize it or not, every time that you have said, I'll do it tomorrow, that's one day that you no longer have to push towards the thing that means the most to you. And I'm not saying that it's going to be something tragic like what happened to me, but if you're 25 and you're single and you're trying to start a business, start that thing. Do it now, because maybe you get a girlfriend, maybe you get engaged, maybe you get married, maybe you have a baby, and now you're 30 and now you still have that dream, but guess what? The opportunity is gone. Why? Because you hesitated. My squad leader told me when we were doing the shoot houses, he's like, Anderson, do you know what kills more men in combat than bullets or IEDs? Hesitation. Because hesitation in combat gets everybody killed.
My squadron commander said the same thing. So he's in front of the squadron and he says to, and there's a lot of guys, I don't care what you do, but make a decision. Make a decision. If it's wrong, we'll fix it.
That's it. On the fly. We'll do it in time.
Yeah, exactly. But we can't have indecision, which is essentially, we both said what you stated there, that time's dwindling. So yeah, what a way to finish there, Marcus. Man, I'm going to put everything down in the show notes of where to find you. But if people could hear it from your mouth to their ears, your website and your socials.
Absolutely. It's MarcusAureliusAnderson.com. You can go there and subscribe to Octa Non-Verba, the podcast. If you want to subscribe to that, you'll get on a mailing list. I'll get even more exclusive content for you. The book is called The Gift of Adversity, Overcoming Paralysis and Pain to Find Purpose. You can get on Amazon, get on Audible. The TEDx is free. It's like 13 minutes. And then I'm on all the socials, on LinkedIn, on Instagram. MarcusAureliusAnderson.com is the podcast. And philosophy is only useful to the person that's actually putting it into play, right? So I can give you the best weapon system in the world, but if you're not going to use it, it just is a pretty accessory, right? So if anything that I said, if anything at all that I said resonated with you, write it down, remember it, put it into play. If you send me an email or send me a message, I'll respond, but I would rather you not say anything to me or even to you about the podcast and put it into play than write something that's sort of a platitude and then not have it happen. And I do understand, statistically, they say that about half the people that buy your book will not finish it. That kind of broke my heart because I bleed onto the page to try to give it to people. Yeah. But then when people were like, listen, you've got all this podcast stuff, you've got a decent voice, read your story to people. And I was like, I don't have time to do that. And then I realized that I have to meet people where they are. Yeah. It's not about my preference. It's about, if I truly want to help people, I have to do that. So it's like, okay, go to a professional studio, take the time and invest in it, but it's worth it. And then it helped me better understand the medium. It helped me become a better writer. And now, again, with the speaking, all those things, as you say, it dovetails. But the idea is, I learned in that bed that the amount of money that you make doesn't matter. The kind of car that you drive or the house that you live in really isn't that important. The amount of money that you have on the computer is just going to be on a computer screen, or it's going to be a number on a piece of paper, man. Like, that's the truth. And if all of that stuff is true, if all the things that society values is truly without much worth, then I ask you, what really is important? And that's what I want people to do. I want them to question. I want them to push themselves. I want them to get uncomfortable with that. I don't know what's important. It's okay. We've all been there. But damn it, don't allow that to be any more excuse. Don't let that be a crutch. Move, do something, even do the wrong thing, but adjust as you move. If we're stagnant, that's when we die. But more importantly, that's when our dreams die. Our influence on the people around us dies. Every decision that we make influences our family, our friends, our children, our teammates. So if you're like, oh, I'm not a leader, you are. And if you don't think it matters, you're wrong. Every drop of water that you put in your mouth, every exercise that you do or choose not to do, it matters. It impacts people. People always talk about influence. Just make impact, because the impact will create all the influence that you want. Change that one person. Give a shit about that one person.
That's exactly it. I said on every show, if one person has one thing that helps them out here, we've done our job. And you've said it in such an eloquent way. Marcus, thank you so much for your time. It's outstanding. I'm absolutely floored, and I'm excited to get this out to those people that need to hear it, and the people that aren't ready for it. It'll still be there when they are.
That's okay. That's absolutely it. It's when I coach executives, it's the same thing. Like, it doesn't matter how big the company is or how much money they have. They're still human, still adversity, and they still have to face it in some way, shape, or form. So it's better to go out and seek it on your own than to wait for it to get to you, because adversity that is avoided is adversity that's multiplied. So get in front of it now.
Man, I love it. I love it. I'll hit pause. We'll have a chat. Thank you so much, Marcus. That's amazing.
Absolutely. Thank you.